Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Slick Pivot Sessions. I'm Liz Ward, the UK's first pivot coach and founder of Slick Pivot. This is the podcast where I dig, delve and deconstruct the journeys of people who have successfully pivoted their careers or businesses. I know it can feel rough when you're at a pivot point, so we'll be stripping back the sugarcoating and uncovering the pitfalls and progress of our guests, unearthing some practical advice for those of you wanting to make a change. Stay listening for help in cracking the formula for making a pivot in your life or work. Today, my guest is Lucy Werner, PR expert, founder of the Wern and best-selling author. Lucy is amazing, and she shares her personal story of scaling down her PR agency and pivoting to teaching small business owners how to do their own PR. The Wern has now evolved into a family business run out of a garden office in East London. Lucy's first book, Hype Yourself, a no-nonsense DIY toolkit for small businesses, is an amazing guide with practical tips on how to get publicity for your business. Lucy tells us how she wrote the book in 3 months, how she made some bold decisions to design her career, and why she is prioritising her children right now. No pivot is ever slick, and Lucy shares all here. We talk about resilience, getting clear on your objectives, and why we are all constantly pivoting to create careers that work for us. There's loads of tips on raising your own profile and making things happen. I loved recording this Slick Pivot session, and I think you will enjoy listening too. Grab a cuppa and enjoy. And if you do like what you hear, please subscribe, write a written review and a star rating on Apple Podcasts. These actions really help us grow the podcast and bring you amazing guests like Lucy. Let's do this. Hi, Lucy. Thank you so much for coming on the Slick Pivot Sessions.
Thank you for having me, Liz Slick Pivot.
So excited about this conversation. I've been observing your pivot journey and been involved in parts of it, and I'm really looking forward to bringing your story to the listeners because it's really interesting, and I know you have been on through quite a lot of highs and lows over the last few years. So I wanted to start at a pivot point for you, which was 2 years ago, where we actually had a conversation.
We did.
You were
in a conversation.
Yeah, you were in your PR agency, and you were really questioning what to do next. And I wonder if you could share what was going on for you there.
Yeah, of course. So at that point, I just returned from my first maternity leave, and I really thought I was going to return to work at 3 months, and I ended up returning to work at 6 months. And I didn't want to be full time. I knew that in my gut. A lot of my clients had kind of been holding for me to return at 6 months. Well, they were waiting for me to return at 3 months. When I wasn't there at 6 months, there was definitely a lot of uncertainty with them, because I think they were okay with me not being there for a period of time, but not being back full on was something that they weren't all comfortable with.
So you had the Wern, which was a PR agency for startups.
Yes.
How long had you been building that before you went on that?
So at that point, I think it had been going 3 years. And, I was the face of the business. I didn't have a co-founder. I had a great team in place, but ultimately I built the business foolishly, kind of myself the face of it. And so my clients wanted me there, and they wanted lots of access to me. And I think from having time away from the business, I realized that what I was doing was building an agency, and that wasn't what I had set out to do. I'd set out to create a publicity service for small businesses, because when I was working in a big agency, it just wasn't affordable for all these amazing small biz owners out there. Like, lots of London agencies are looking at a minimum of like $5,000 a month turnover, and lots of the people I were meeting in my network didn't have that, but had great businesses, and I was trying to find a way to serve them, but instead of which I was sort of replicating a more boutique version of a London PR agency, and that wasn't really what I'd set out to do.
Right. So your original vision was to kind of help the smaller guys, and then you ended up kind of creating a business that I suppose you knew how to do because you'd worked in those organizations.
Yeah. And it
So
was just, I didn't really think about it. And I was also taking a lot of mentorship from men at that time. I'm not trying to like man bash it, but it was a lot of kind of former bosses or people who'd run big ad agencies. So their mentality was also like, just grow it to sell it, grow it to turn over 1 million. Once you hit 1 million, you'll be of interest to other people. And so I kind of had that weirdly as my business goal, but it wasn't my goal. It was sort of theirs being channeled through me, and I just didn't notice, I guess.
Yeah, so the advice that you were hearing was kind of like industry standards. This is what you're supposed to do if you've got an agency. This is the steps you should follow, and so you kind of found yourself naturally following those steps.
It was safe.
Yeah, and you had your little baby at this point, and you'd gone on a trip for your maternity leave, hadn't you?
Yeah, so I was supposed to take shared parental leave and return to work full time, and Hadrien was going to take full care of the child. But when it came to it, I was like, I don't want to go back. What do we do? And it was important to us that the baby was bilingual, that Hadrien was living in England to work, but his French identity was a huge part of who he was, and he wanted to bring that in quite early on into our family and the way we raised our child together. So we basically decided we would go on a tour of France, visiting all of his family, because he was born in the north but moved to the south. And I kind of worked remotely 2 days a week whilst traveling around France with him, that was not part of the plan, but that was just a major shared parental leave pivot in my maternity leave journey.
And they're like the classic freedom career, working from a laptop, traveling.
Yeah, it was hard. It was definitely moments where I just thought, it'd be good to totally not have this at all and just be present. But I needed money, so it's not
able to switch it on and be able to work and keep in, I suppose, to fund the trip.
Yeah, I'd saved up a lot of money in my maternity leave, and Hadrien at that time was working for a company that was paying a large proportion of his salary still, even as part of shared parental leave, which is very unusual. So we were in quite a privileged position.
Yeah. And so after you had that break, well, the break whilst working 2 days a week, you then like, I'm supposed to be going back to work properly now when you get back to England, and you decided you didn't want to. And so
I decided I knew I didn't want to. I didn't see the business as being financially viable when I returned. I had a lot of full-time staff, the freelancers, it wasn't so much of a problem, but I normally forecast sort of 6 months in advance the future sort of quarter quite a lot in detail, and there was nothing on the books for the next quarter coming in. All there was client losses, and I was just like, I'm going to have to plug the gap here myself to keep it going with the team. And I don't even
do new business development, bring in some new clients, grow the existing.
And I just didn't have it. I just didn't have that same drive like I had before. And my instincts were like, nurture myself and my baby. Before it was fine. If there wasn't enough money in the bank, I'd pay the team first, always, as you should be doing. But I was suddenly in a position where I was like, it's not just me now. I need to take an income to support the family. So I wasn't in a position where I could just carry the team for a few months and not pay myself in a way that I had been in the past.
So it was change ahead. So at that point, you had a new vision, you were shaping a new idea. What was going on in your head for the business and for you as a lifestyle?
I think I remember sort of speaking to you, and I knew that I needed to get rid of the team, and that was a really difficult decision. And actually at that point in time, I felt a lot of shame and failure, that I had not made the business more profitable, that there wasn't more money in the bank, that I had set up around me when I should have set up more around maybe having a co-founder and a wider team. And I kind of actually hid for a year. I wasn't really on social media. I was just taking on projects that were well paid and doing 2 days a week. But really, I didn't see anybody to get that sort of work done. I was kind of doing a 4-day week in 2 days, which is perfectly possible. but I just hid from everybody. So when I was doing those 2 days a week working, I wasn't taking phone calls, I wasn't seeing people, I wasn't going networking, I wasn't learning anything, just, really just hiding from the world, head down, get the money in.
So you had head down. So were you consulting for other companies and providing your skill set?
A mixture. I was doing a lot of white labeling for PR agencies that couldn't secure press coverage for chief execs. Because one of the things that I'm quite good at doing is raising like founders' profiles. Mm-hmm. So I was doing a lot of work around that, kind of white labeled. I had a couple of projects of my own. And actually I was doing a lot of work for the innovation arm of Mother London. They had a couple of projects that they farmed out my way, which were really fun, really cool sort of startup brands, but that had a kind of nice project fee. And they were flexible to me just doing 2 days a week. And that was the main thing. It was being able to sort of say to people, outside of a Tuesday and Wednesday, if it's an emergency, I'll respond. But I couldn't be taking these client work on that would be saying, actually, if there's an emergency at 4:00 on a Friday, I wouldn't be able to deal with that.
So you were managing those family boundaries, but you said you're kind of hiding. That must
hidden,
have been
really hidden.
Yeah.
Do you know what
did you think that was keeping? Was it the fear, the fear of people thinking you'd failed, or what?
Yeah, because I'd been quite public in the growth of the agency, and I was proud of it, and so I really put my flag in the sand. There was photos of me and my team like out in publicity shots. I talked about hiring an apprentice for National Apprenticeship Week, and also I think I think to be a great boss and a great leader is a job in itself.
Yes,
and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do publicity, and so I don't think I was a very good boss or leader. I think I could, under pressure, I'd really buckle, and I could be known for sort of like losing my temper or getting quite sort of stressed out, because I always wanted to deliver great work, and I'd panic if I felt like we weren't doing that. And actually, I think if my full-time job was just nourishing a team and being a leader, I would take the time to really learn the craft of doing that and do that. But you can't sort of be the face of the business and do the work and lead the team on your own.
It's a lot. It's a lot to take on. And I think nobody's taught to be a leader. You learn your craft of like the skill set, whatever you're working on. I know, your specialism is PR. You learn that through experience, and leading people, you're expected to know that as well. So especially when you're working for yourself, you're having to do so many things and wear so many hats that it's like, either you go full on to learn, like, I'm going to be a real leader here and I'm going to let everybody else do the work. But it sounds like the work was what
I was doing a lot of the work, and I enjoyed a lot of the work. That was like, that is what my kind of passion was. But also, when you have multiple clients and you're overseeing like multiple clients, and nowadays they would be contacting us because of the way we worked as an agency. It was very modern. So we had some people messaging us on Slack, some on WhatsApp, some on email, some would be picking up the phone. So at any one point, I'd be sort of having a team meeting, and you could see kind of like 5 different clients contacting you all at the same time.
Angles.
Yeah, and then that's aside from journalists wanting information, which is kind of like the knee-jerk thing of like, as soon as a journalist asks for something, you deliver it immediately. So it is a highly pressurized job, and it is quite stressful.
It sounds stressful, and it sounds quite high pressure, fast paced, like literally things coming at you from every angle, and you having to react. And when you didn't have the responsibility of the baby, maybe that's, you had that fire in your belly, and it sounded like then there was a shift. It's like, is this the kind of business I want to be running? This is not what I expected to be doing.
No, not at all. And that's why I guess in that year I kind of went away and I licked my wounds quite a lot, and I just sort of thought about what I really wanted. And I was offered some really lucrative contracts in that time, which were really difficult to say no to, because you're obviously thinking, well, that's the mortgage, that's me covered. But I knew in my heart it wasn't right, and I had to really reposition what it was that I wanted. So I kind of sat dormant really till October 2018, and then I spent some money on some headshots for myself. And I always say to people, if you want to raise your profile, raise your brand, spend the money on your headshots. Because if you get booked to speak at an event, or you're on a podcast, or you're in the newspaper, like, they're going to ask you for a decent photo of yourself. And if you're raising your profile on social media, it's also good to have a few different options. But also, if you invest in yourself, you then are kind of forced. So I spent the best part of I think I spent £500 on my press shots, and I got mates rates. Should have been more than that, but I got a good bank of images, and I thought, right, okay, I've invested in this now. I need to start putting myself out there. And at that point, I had just got pregnant with baby number 2.
Yay.
And I thought, okay, I need to be thinking ahead now. What can I be doing when I'm on, in inverted commas, maternity leave, and for the next few years, without a team that can give me an income that is flexible? And it was at that point that I started the kind of pivot of raising my own profile as a PR expert.
Yes.
And I had on my vision board to do a book, that I wanted to do online courses, that I wanted to do coaching, that I wanted to be more of a teacher and expert and be booked to do workshops, and still kind of keep one foot in that PR world. Because I think if you're not doing any publicity for anybody, you're not keeping your foot in the door. You don't,
it's like keeping the craft alive, isn't it? Keeping fresh.
You need to keep the muscle going.
Yeah.
I have to keep flexing that publicity muscle. And it feeds me as well. One of the ways I really nourish myself is to read the newspapers, because it just gives me so many ideas of stories and trends and what the reporters are writing on. And it's the most sort of forgotten bit of the PR craft. But the basic thing is read the publications you want to be in.
Yeah, and immerse yourself, because that's where creativity comes. And I love you do little updates, don't you, sometimes on the Sunday papers, which always make me smile, because the way that your brain works when you read a newspaper is different to the normal reader.
I get that quite a lot from people. Like, I get really nice feedback when I do the Sunday papers, and it's really funny because it's not something I sort of think about, but everybody else is like, God, it's so weird how you read them. And I was like, yeah, I guess I do.
You've got a superpower. So it's funny because I interviewed Susie Redding earlier in this podcast, and
I listened.
We both talked about how when you get pregnant, you suddenly get very clear, because your priorities.
You're on a deadline.
Yeah, you're on a deadline. Nothing like a baby, like a deadline. And it focuses you, and you go, okay, actually, what do I want? What life do I want to create for this family? What life do I want to create for me? What kind of working mum do I want to be? And especially with baby number 2, you've kind of been through a bit of a test run on like what it's all like. So you were at this point, you had your headshots, you were, putting together a strategy, and the idea of the book was still there. So what happened? How did we get to the book?
So do you know what, actually there's a key component there that I missed out, which is that Hadrien, who I've already mentioned, is not only my creative partner in my business, but also my baby daddy. But he does branding and design. So I kind of said to him, I want to go out with these headshots. I want to start pushing my profile. I feel like my Instagram just doesn't represent me, and I kind of want to use it like a billboard, right? So the billboard doesn't sell the product, but when you see the product everywhere on billboards, it reminds you to get it. And so I thought, as part of my journey to get the book, I need to start billboarding like myself as a PR service, as a helpful service that's affordable for people. And I want to have a big, fun, bright, colourful brand. I'm quite punchy and direct sometimes. I can be meek and insecure and all the other things that we all have, but I like to think that I'm like fun and bright and colourful. And Hadrien sort of went off and came up with some backgrounds for me that he gave to me as my Christmas present. It's funny actually, because I know that Al's got you didn't he get you your podcast mic?
My microphone that I'm talking into now. Yeah, he got me that for Mother's Day. He's like, here you go, darling. Go and do your vision. And it's so lovely.
We need pushes from the men sometimes. So he
Yeah, I think they can kind of see the desire, and then like, having a helpful partner that has got a skill set and that is able to support you and go, I believe in you, darling. Here you are. Like, here's and that's what they both did for us, which I think it definitely, it took me a while to get going with the podcast, but definitely like gave me a nudge, I know, to go,
I mean,
let's take this seriously now. Let's actually, this is for the family. It's not just me messing around. It's for the family, and let's go for it.
Yeah, Hadrien says that a lot, like, we're family. And I think I feel really like privileged that I have his support, and I'm very lucky that I have a complementary skill set in him. But yeah, so he literally just kind of created on sheets of A3 loads of different backgrounds, and then he helped me kind of create some Instagram templates. And actually, he would kill me if I sort of told everybody that I started with photos and then Instagram templates and then we created the brand, because for him, that is completely the wrong way around to do it. But that's how I did it. Don't do it that way. But I think he then helped me create my brand guidelines of kind of who I am, what I stand for, what my colors are, what my fonts are. And then it was sort of like, right, Thunderbirds are go. And I basically just came out of the gate in January, giving out as much free content as I could, primarily on Instagram.
And who were you helping? You were helping one-man bands, food startups. Like, who were you helping at that point?
So I had two very specific audiences in mind. So one is kind of like the people who might have a side hustle, or freelancers, or people just at the beginning of their business journey. And then I also kind of like the almost sort of start up to scale up businesses that have a bit of funding that maybe might want to use me for like a 3 to 6 month consultancy project. And that kind of more, I guess, my kind of LinkedIn crew, I guess, is where my sort of other audience play. And so I was just giving out like really obvious, to me, what were really obvious tips, but to other people, they were like, oh, this is really helpful. And it's funny
because what other people don't know, like, what is a press release? Like, how do you get...
Oh God, I hate them.
There's very, very, because you're an expert in it, it's often, you forget that it's ingrained, but it's useful to others, because
I think it's that PR mindset as well. Like when you're talking about how I read the papers, a lot of my most popular posts are how I respond to things on Netflix, because I always see a PR angle in them. So I think, like, I talked about the Fire Festival documentary and Kathy Burke's documentary.
Oh, I love that.
That Kathy Burke documentary post I did is still like one of the most engaged posts I've ever had on my Instagram. And I'm not even particularly talking about PR. It's just my kind of like PR spin on what I've seen. So yeah, it was I was sort of finding my voice and finding my feet, and actually it was really helpful to me because it gave me ideas of what people were interested in. Because sometimes I post stuff, like I did one on signatures the other day and how Hadrien has done his, and I thought that was like gold, and literally nobody cared. And I didn't sort of care that much about it, because I was like, well, I thought it was really good. Maybe it was a weird time of day that I posted it, or maybe you're not interested. But for me, that's still like a good nugget of information. So I still share stuff, even if I think basically my point on that bit is that lots of people share stuff for clickbait, and actually I just share stuff that I think is going to be useful. Mm-hmm. But the stuff that then turns into clickbait is what I kind of then used for the book, or I use for talks or for guest posts, or I try and give as tips if I'm, at an event or something.
You're kind of like, we're creating this content, and then you knew when it came to writing the book, this is the stuff that people really want to know.
Yeah. Well, actually, I took a bit of a gamble on the book, because I think, again, going against the clickbait thing, when you see other PRs talking online or lots of sponsored content on PR, it's very much framed around, do you want to get in Forbes? Do you want to get on TV? Would you like to get your business in The Guardian, for example? Mm-hmm. And I don't think that necessarily is what's going to help people's businesses. I think what helps people's businesses is a well thought out publicity plan, which starts with your business objectives and the why you're doing the publicity in the first place, right? So I want to publicize myself for the book. Therefore, press coverage for me doesn't work that hard as it does, say, an event. When I go to an event, I can immediately see the uplift in sales on the book. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like testing and learning to see like what really works for your service or product based business. So basically roundabout, got the brand, started putting the content out there, did a 10-day book proposal challenge with a woman called Alison Jones. She is a business book expert and has her own publishing company. And once a quarter, she runs this 10-day challenge where you learn to write your own book proposal. And at the end of it...
Is that free?
No, it's paid for. It was £100, I believe now, because it's so popular, she's put it up to £199, because I think a lot of people are just spending £100 and then not doing it.
Okay. So she was
trying to control like the numbers. Yeah. So at the end, she marks all of the proposals and gives them back to you. So you can either take it to an agent or you can take it yourself to the commissioning editors of the business books.
So by the end of the 10 days, you basically have a book proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
And I knew that I wanted my book to be different from all these other PR books that were saying, here's how to get press coverage. So mine was like a real working toolkit of all the training I've ever had in the 16 years I've done publicity, and started with, this is the strategy that you need before you do anything. Then chapter 2 is like, this is everything you need in your toolkit before you even speak to anybody. And then chapters 3 and 4 were like the tactics of how you actually go out. And I try and include things like the different types of journalists, an email format that you can replicate to pitch. Because I think people, they sort of get lost in like all the maelstrom of like information, and nobody was really just clearly spelling it out. Mm-hmm. This is what you write in your subject line. This is what you write in your email.
It is so clear and really easy to follow your book. It's like, I mean, it says, it's a no-nonsense PR toolkit for small businesses. It really is. And anyone with a small business can literally pick it up and go, right, what are Lucy's tips on this? I mean, I had an interview with the Earth 2 recently, and I'm like, okay, what does Lucy say about this? And so it's really, really practical, and I think that's what sets it apart a bit. And it's fun as well. It's not written in a very boring way.
I think it's just, for me, the main difference between that book, my book, and the other publicity books is nobody else was kind of doing that strategy and that the sort of the thinking up front. And that's the bit that I felt like was missing. That's the bit that actually nobody's interested in. It's not the clickbait bit. If I talk about planning or organizing yourself on Instagram, no one's going, oh, that's sexy information, I'm going to start sharing that to all my followers. But it was, to me, that was the important bit. So I had to really like keep to my integrity and my values of like what it was I was trying to get people to do. And I think they basically respected me for it. So I was kind of like, stop doing it this way and do it like this. I know what I'm talking about. And they were like, oh, okay. And so I kind of went against the mainstream a little bit.
Yeah, and stuck to your guns and didn't get swayed by maybe what you thought you should do. This is what you actually think.
Yeah. So then I did the book proposal challenge, and I was keen as mustard. I knew exactly what the book was going to be about. I was replying to the kind of emails she sent out every morning at the crack of dawn. I was ready, and I was like, I am going to win this. And I burst into the living room and said to Hadrien, I've won!
So one person from the whole course could win, and you won.
Yeah, but at that point I hadn't. I was just pretending, and he was like, what are you doing? I was like, I just want to know what it feels like to win. And on the day that Alison was announcing who won, I emailed myself and in the subject line said, and the winner is, and then I typed my name in large font and I sent it to myself.
Oh my goodness, I love that.
And then I did this thing. I don't know if anybody ever does this, but as I was walking on the Facebook, I was walking while she was doing the Facebook Live to announce the winner. And on the way up to waiting for her to come on Facebook Live, I was clicking random on Spotify. And if any of the songs were related to positivity or winning, I started to convince myself that this was a sign that I was going to win.
Yeah. Yeah. So, absolutely love that. And as we moved to the countryside 2 years ago, and we were basically in like a bid to get this house, and we had to we were going to get it or not. And I had everyone visualize their cars in the drive, and I sent them photographs of the driveway, and I'm like, I just want you to spend the next 24 hours imagining your car in my drive.
I love that.
But like really feeling like it's happened is quite, I don't know, is it manifesting? Is it?
I don't know if I believe the manifesting thing or not, but I won it. So
Yay.
Something happened. So I won this book deal, and I was like, Alison, this is fantastic. Heads up, got a baby coming out in June. So we need to get cracking. So that was my deadline to get the first draft of the book done. So yeah, then literally that was it.
Started writing.
Yeah, started writing a lot.
And how do you write a book in that amount of time and not get distracted, procrastinate?
I'm a real geek and a planner, so I had a kind of breakdown of the minimum number of words I needed to do week by week. So I had to do 3,000 words a week, which isn't that much for me. I'm a natural waffler, and if you're free writing, which I kind of was, you can dump that down quite quickly. And it was also, I'd already written a lot of blog posts, so I was rehashing a lot of content and just shoving it in. None of it flowed, but it was kind of like, oh, here's my blog post on how to pitch to a journalist, I'll shove that in. Here's my blog post on how to do personal photography, I'll shove that in. And so I kind of wasn't worried about it flowing or it making sense. It wasn't, it wasn't a kind of once upon a time flow. It was,
you weren't being a perfectionist about it. You weren't going, okay, I'm going to get this sentence right and then do the next sentence.
No. It was literally just like, get the numbers down. So I had a spreadsheet which had how many words I'd allocated for each section, and I just kept throwing words into each section until I hit word count, and then I kept going, and I think I actually ended up going over my word count by 22,000.
Right.
But that was fine, because then there was lots of repetition, and I could go in and strip a load of content out. And actually my first version was full of quite a few swear words, so I had to go through and remove all the swearing. And also, not advisable, but Hadrien got made redundant 2 days after I got my book deal, which suddenly put him on gardening leave for 5 months. So I was like, great, you can look after the kids kid at that time. And I'm going to spend the time where I used to be looking after the kids, taking on extra work and writing the book. So I can bring in, I can up my own income for a while and save up more money. Bizarrely, it actually worked in our favour. Like, I could actually pocket a bit more money away before I went on maternity leave.
Yeah, so you were able to fill that savings pot a bit more and write the book, and so kind of like be absorbed in PR. Still doing PR, which must have helped with the book writing, I imagine. And he was able to help with the kids. Oh, that's good, with the kid at the time. And so, okay, so you got the book, and then the baby came.
Yeah. And just before baby came, I pivoted the business again, because we realized that Hadrien was not going to qualify for paternity leave if he took a job elsewhere. So he joined the business as creative director, and we were launching a branding and design arm. So in May, we launched our first product, which was these 52 PR tips, which he designed and I wrote. So we started to market them. We were starting to market him and launching him in the business to do branding and design. So we just launched him in May, and then in June, my baby was born, and I was sort of thinking I'll be home the next day, and then I'm just going to kind of lie around and really just take a break because I'd been really running hard for that 6 months, kind of thinking as soon as the baby comes, I'm just going to completely step off.
Yeah, it's like you've gone from the kind of like the hiding period to this very I suppose a public launch period for the book, pre-promotion. You were on
loads of events, loads of podcasts, like as much publicity for myself as I could to just get my name out there. And then I thought, I'm probably going to hide for a couple of months and just let Hadrien take control,
because your goal was to have like your profile up, really up, and then that could happen, and then you had a family business, so you've gone from having the classic agency style thing to being a one-man band, to then it becoming a family business, and you were going to take a break.
That was the plan. And then when my baby was born, he was diagnosed with 3 congenital heart conditions. He's actually now got 4 at 8 months. It wasn't something that was on the cards, and it meant we were into a world of unknown. Rushed to like Great Ormond Street, and at one point we had that kind of awful phone call of like, you need to come in now, where he had life-saving surgery at day 6. So if it hadn't have been detected by our local hospital and we'd been sent home, I absolutely wouldn't be sat here talking to you with any kind of sane mind today.
No,
And
that must have been one of the most awful days.
Yeah, it really was. And it at that point, it made me really refocus on what was important to me. And it was also really scary, because on one side it was great that Hadrien and I were working for ourselves, so we didn't have to worry about reporting into our bosses. We didn't have to worry. I could hear loads of dads on that ward freaking out that they were supposed to be returning back to work after a fortnight.
Yeah, and feeling the pressure of the boss saying, "Where are you?" And you're in great.
And they hadn't even had a paternity leave. They'd just been sat watching their baby on a ventilator. So on one side we were lucky, but on the flip side, there comes a complete lack of support. We didn't have any backup sort of income plans. It's not like there was anybody in the office that could do a whip round for us. And actually the startup and freelance community was insane at that time. Like, they sent us gifts, people were sending us food, had like Moji was sending us like of their shots to keep us going, and then they sent us some like healthy food. And the freelance community really supported us. Lara from Found and Flourish set up I think it's called like a Ko-fi page, so people could buy us a coffee.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. And we were basically in and out of hospital. We got home after a month. We had 3 weeks, and then he got a wound infection. So I was back sleeping in a hospital for a month. And then after that, it was the emotional turmoil to recover from, because it wasn't, there's swathes of that time I just don't even remember.
Yeah, because it was a trauma. You were in trauma.
Yeah.
Completely unexpected, and in, fight or flight. And when you're in that, your brain just doesn't remember things.
I literally, the swathes of from the last 6 months of 2019, I don't remember any of it. I literally just said to myself, and it was funny when you talked to Susie, I was like, those were so my coping mechanisms of take a walk every day and eat well and sleep, because I was like, if I don't do that, I can't support the children and I can't keep the business going. So that's what I had to do. We were also in a really lucky position that all of our clients, and I think you were included in that collection at one point as well.
You were working on my website.
Knew us and were really understanding about us saying, look, you can either pause and we can refund you, or you could just bear with us for a couple of weeks and then we'll be back and we're going to deliver it still, but you just need to give us a bit of time. And every single person waited and sort of held hands with us and kind of took us through. And that was
but people were human because you were human. And I think that sometimes people like pretend everything's cool to try and keep work going, and in the small business world we do need to recognize that life happens and curveballs come, and you have worked, you've built a client base of people that you enjoy working with, which I know is one of your key values as well. So I'm pleased that you had that support from your client base.
And now we're kind of pivoting the business around what life is going to look like with a child that could at a moment's notice need open heart surgery again, which we had again. We thought we kind of had a run up of a couple of years, and in December we were told he was having open heart surgery again in January 2020, which we weren't expecting so soon. For that, we then were expecting to be off work for 2 to 3 weeks, and we were home after 5 days. So all of it's sort of unexpected. So continuing moving forwards, we're going to have to be very open and honest with clients and the work that we take on. Hadrien is more full-time with the branding and design, so it doesn't affect him so much. But because I'm kind of the more on-call member of the parent squad for the hospital appointments, I'm definitely now looking to sort of flex up what I'm doing. So I'm not sure I'll ever go back to the 12-month retainer model ever again. Never say never.
At this stage with the kids at their ages and where you're at, you don't see that being a thing?
No, just sort of ad hoc consultancy and white labeling here and there still, for sure. But my favorite thing right now is doing lots of one-to-one coaching with people, and doing lots of kind of teaching. So I'm an instructor for Jolt now, which is like an online business school. I'm doing lots of guest lectures with business schools and universities, and with work hubs, like lots of work hubs book me for like paid sort of talks at a lunchtime remotely, which is great for me because I can just hand the baby over to Hadrien for lunchtime shifts, do my hours talk on the computer, then take baby back and get on with my sort of mumming day. So yeah, it's really changed me even to what I thought it was going to look like. And learning to settle and be okay with that's been quite hard as well.
Yeah. What are you, I suppose, what are you proud of in how you've pivoted your mindset to what you expected this year to be? Because I know the book came out, the book launch was in January, just before his operation. And, you know, you had to kind of readjust your expectations. What are you proud of in what you did there?
You know, it's so funny because the book almost went into a blow as well, like you said, because I launched the book and then a week later he was having surgery, and I had to not tell anybody just so I could get through that book launch because I didn't want people speaking to me about it at that event. So it was all kind of like, it was all a bit buried. So it's hard, I guess. Sort of the proudness, I guess, is surviving and still keeping the business going, still making an income and getting that book across the line and actually launching it, given everything that the universe had thrown at me to try and stop me doing it.
Yeah. And now you've got this business that is really flexible, and that you can, you know, you can choose to dial up when you do. And I know you're really focusing on the baby right now, and Hadrien can do the branding arm. So what a journey. And what would you say I mean, you talked about a lot of the challenges. What would you say the real key challenges have been?
You know what? I think it's being kind to yourself, and the expectations you set on yourself for your business. I hear lots of people talk about, you know, I've been going for this amount of time, I should have done this by now, or I wanted to do this. I'm the worst for it. So I wanted to hit Amazon #1. I did it, and then I was like, oh, but now I'm not in Sunday Times business bestseller. And like, I moved the goalposts all the time for myself, and actually just surviving. You know, we've got funny times coming up ahead with coronavirus.
We do.
And I think for all of us, like buckling down and just keeping each other going for the next few months it's going to be a really weird and testing time out there, and it's very unprecedented. So I think just being kind to ourselves about what we can achieve and being proud of what we have achieved, and resilience, just get bucket loads of it.
And you know, you mentioned going for a walk. How are you filling your tank?
Talking to you, Liz, is how I fill my tank. I mean, I've definitely had in all seriousness, I definitely had that panic call with you, didn't I, a few weeks ago? I was like, help my resilience levels. I think it's having a support network in business, as well as with your friends. One of the things I've been guilty of doing is sort of spreading it out across too many people because I don't want to put it on one or two. So I'm really learning to just focus on a couple of friendships that can support me. And I just try and do lots of good things to myself, like go outside, read, do cooking, try and do exercise, you know, all the things that kind of Susie was talking about, of like little self-care things that we can do. I just try and implement as many of those things as I can, but the basic 3 of walking, eating and sleeping every day.
Yeah. And it's so funny, isn't it? Like, we've got to just get to basics when these crisis hits, or, you know, we really need to be there for ourselves, and everything else is making sure that we're getting those basics right. I could just keep seeing that more and more. Like,
you know, it's funny as well. I'm such a crier, Liz. Like, normally when something happens, and especially like really petty stuff, I can really cry my eyes out. And at the moment they told me, you know, which was a life-changing moment, when they told me your son is critically ill. He's going to need life-saving surgery in Great Ormond Street. We don't know what this is going to look like. You need to speak to a specialist. All we can say is it's very, very serious. I just went, I'm going to go and eat my macaroni cheese.
Right.
And that is not how I normally react to high-level drama. And it really surprised me. But I was like, Hadrien's got the baby. I need to just go. And as soon as I stepped out of that room, I hysterically cried down the corridor. But there was just some weird maternal resilient survival instinct that was like, go and eat.
Go and eat. And it is amazing. My son's also been in Gosh, and you just find more in you, don't you? Suddenly you just find more, but we've just got to keep filling up our tanks to keep going. Oh, thank you so much. And so what are your biggest high five moments since that first pivot, back 2 years ago?
I think getting the book deal. Actually, I think the marshmallows, because I was working with them on the CBD marshmallows. So when they went viral, that was really fun.
Yeah.
And I also worked on a fish and chip shop at the time who launched a vegan arm, and at peak I think I got over 200 pieces of press coverage for them, which included an interview in the New York Times.
Woo,
and it was just so random because it was just me, and they were on global news across the world because Bloomberg, I got the food critic of Bloomberg down, so they were suddenly on like Bloomberg TV. Like, it just went bananas, and I was like, it's just little old me in my garden office making this go crazy,
hitting the world news. Oh, well done.
Yeah. So but I get little high fives all the time, like people who've read the book and they've suddenly got themselves on the radio, or they're like, oh, I've got the confidence now to get my headshots. Like, I get lots of lovely little pitter patters of applauses all the time, which keep me going.
Yeah, it's nice to hear the little bits of feedback along the way, isn't it? That's why you do what you do, I imagine.
Yeah, totally.
And so what would the old you say to the new you?
Why didn't you do this sooner?
Ooh.
Like, why did you get distracted? And also, I think choose your mentors wisely.
Right.
We can all get influenced by the people around us, and I think we can really get sucked into charming people, and actually then and lose what it is we're really doing.
Yeah, so it's about maybe building mentors with people that are doing things that you want to do or you're aspiring to, because otherwise, like you said earlier, you're ending up following advice for something that's not really your dream, and that's really good advice. And so I am asking every guest this: what do you think the formula is to pivoting? What bits, combo of things do you need to be able to make a change in life or business?
Resilience plus enthusiasm would be my formula.
Resilience plus enthusiasm. Oh, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy to hear your story and for you to share. And thank you for being so open. And so what is next for you, and where can everybody find you?
So, you know what? I think I might do a little vacay to the south of France to just completely step away and think about what my next kind of big steps are going to be. But I think it's going to be a kind of a slight pivot on what I'm doing now. So watch this space. Still obviously in the PR teaching world, but probably more of a supportive side to Hadrien for the short term as well, and do more, kind of use him as my client and promote him a bit more.
Lovely. Constant. We're always pivoting, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's not just one change, it's constant, to just keep refining and making things work for the time in your life where you're at. Lovely. And so your book, it's called Hype Yourself. It's on Amazon. And
please buy it for yourself or for other people, and help. My whole line is like, help this small business help other small businesses.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Lucy.
Thank you, Liz. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Slick Pivot Sessions with me, Liz Ward, the podcast for life's achievers and believers. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this as much as I've enjoyed making it. Please take a moment to rate and review on Apple or Google or wherever you get your podcasts. This helps us to grow and bring you amazing guests like Lucy. The show notes have all the links and references from today's session. And for your weekly dose of pivot inspiration, sign up to Slick Pivot Sunday, my weekly newsletter. Just visit slickpivot.com. And until our next session together, stay nimble and remember, no pivot is ever